Well, once again, I got the opportunity to say the sentence. As some of you may know, recently I've had the chance to visit Riot's headquarters. And it is in this video that I finally got a chance to talk about what we've been doing there. Specifically, it is two things, and today we are allowed to talk about one of them. And that, of course, is the new upcoming champion, Aurora. The one that was first teased in the amazing in-client event called the Spirit of Hearthhome. Now, Aurora had a bit of a scary first reveal, because she was always teased using bunny puns, but then when her assets popped up on PBE, there were no bunnies to be seen and people got scared because all we got is a whole new character with just a human face. But thankfully later Spirit of Hearthhome revealed that indeed Aurora is actually a bunny Vastaya. And because I know everyone is asking this same important question. Yes, even in game you can see her bunny ears. She has a really cool hat that actually has holes for her ears. Now, before we dive into all her gameplay specifics, I quickly want to mention that I did not dive into her bio just yet, and that also includes her champion insights. However, when Riot showed us Aurora, they also gave us her story beats. So if you are expecting a deep dive into her background, that one will come in a separate video. So today we are focusing on the general introduction of the character, the story, and the gameplay. All of which looks really good. So, let's talk about that. The story of Aurora was written by the same person who is responsible for the story of Melio, as well as the Caitlyn and Nidalee updates, as well as the story of Spirit of Hearthhome. Now let's start with a really cool fact. Aurora's character is indeed based on autism. Yes, she's one of us. Now, of course, Riot never directly calls her autistic anywhere in the story. And that's simply because the universe of Runeterra in general doesn't give anyone any labels. Their entire society just doesn't work like that. I mean, the entire lore of Noxus is based on that. But know that Aurora is on the autistic spectrum nonetheless. Which is why, if you go back to the Spirit of Hearthhome, it was just about Aurora cleaning Ornn's workspace. Everything makes sense now. Anyway, Aurora comes from the Vastayan tribe called Briny. And specifically, she comes from the village of Amu. As far as we know, she eventually leaves her village with the goal of learning about the spirits from the spirit realm. The cool thing about this, however, is that in order to do this, she is practicing witchcraft, which is a new kind of magic that hasn't really been explored before. I mean, sure, Demacians call mages witches all the time just to curse them. But Aurora is our first witch that is not a shaman or anything like that. And what's cool about that is that this is the first League of Legends character that is bound to please the entire Harry Potter audience. That entire fantasy side has not been served in League till now. Now, when it comes to her story specifically, we all know that she's trying to help Haestreer, who is a Freljordian old god just like Volibear, Ornn or Anivia. Now, from the other stories, we know that these gods rely on being worshipped. That's where all of them gain their power. So Aurora is trying to make sure that Haestreer is not forgotten. And of course, that is all tied to Lyssandra's story with the Frostguard, who are pretty much trying to wipe all the Freljordian demigods from living memory. Now, as she learns about the Freljordian spirits and the demigods, she also gets to learn about their ancient names, which is why she calls, for example, Ornn Ramhorg. And apparently, this might not be mentioned in her bio, but it was something that was shown to us in the presentation, is that Anivia's ancient name should be Isiarn. But keep in mind that that name might eventually change. I mean, even Ornn had a slightly different ancient name during Aurora's development. So for now, just keep this one as a piece of fun trivia. Hold on! A quick message from the future. So, apparently, yesterday, on accident, Riot released Aurora's story together with her splash art. Both of those were supposed to come out today. So not only did we already get her bio, but we also got the people's opinions on her, but we'll get to that in a moment. More importantly, in the bio they do mention that Anivia's name is Isyarn. So the name stuck around, except now it is spelled differently. With that, back to the present days. And speaking of development, over time Riot also tried different animals. So besides a bunny, Aurora also might have been a squirrel or a chipmunk. But yes, eventually they landed on a bunny. And they purposefully held back on revealing her animalistic side till the very last moments. Which is where we can also mention her splash art. This splash art is simply really good. And you might notice that she has a new hat there. In fact, this should be a hat crafted by Ornn, which is something that is also referenced as an Easter egg in the game. When Ornn upgrades a Rabadon's death cap specifically on Aurora, he turns it into the witch's hat. Now hang on a second, another message from the future. Since Riot accidentally gave us an unfinished version of the splash art early, the community already jumped on it. But based on the feedback, for the most part, people really like her design. Although, a lot of people took inspiration from Briar and they started focusing on the very important parts. The thighs. On one side, people are talking about the size, and yes, it seems like it is bigger than her waist. But that's only in the splash art. In-game, she seems to be fine. But other than that, I will admit, seeing this kind of clothes in the Freljord is kinda funny. But it is important to mention that she is Vastaya, and she does actually have her own fur to keep herself warm. I know I'm picking at straws here, but if you zoom in on a level that is way too uncomfortable to me, you can actually see the fur on her. Which means that in her case, for the most part, the clothing should be an aesthetic choice. In fact, during the presentation we got on Aurora's design, it was mentioned that Aurora is into crochet. And it is very likely that she made these clothes herself. With that interesting fact, let's go back into the present days. Now, besides this awesome design on the champion itself, the visual effects were also given a lot of details. So as you're casting her spells, just notice that there is gonna be a lot of known Freljordian runes and some spirit magic. When you tie these two together, it means that the spells have an icy core, but also warm magic around it. And that brings us to her gameplay. Now, Aurora is supposed to be a solo laner. Specifically, she is a mage that can be played either top or mid, but to me, it felt like you can play her in a lot of different ways too. For example, she is supposed to be a skirmisher, but I noticed you can also play her as an assassin. But even funnier than that, it seems like she might be able to work as a attack speed magic carry. Kinda like the old school Kog'Maw. So, when it comes to her passive, she has a 3-hit passive. When you proc that, the target takes some magic damage based on percentage health, and it also increases magic damage taken by the target. Overall, she has some really good tools for poking, but this passive might be able to raise the ceiling for some of the great players. For example, in this case, you might wanna proc the passive before you go for trades. Also, a nice bonus, as you keep proccing this passive, you keep summoning more spirity friends. Anyway, her Q is a line skill shot, kinda similar to Ahri. Except it marks all the enemies, and when you recast the ability, you rip spirits out of all the enemies you hit and they deal damage as they come back to you. Also, this ability gets increased damage based on the enemy's missing health, because why not? Next, her W is a stealth. I know, things are about to get scary. Though she pulls this off by jumping through a portal, so technically she is jumping into the spirit realm. Now, first of all, the animation of her going into stealth is great. But it also has a big purpose, because there is a delay. She is locked into the animation until she lands in the spirit realm. Which means that 1, you can actually catch her before she goes into stealth, but also she can juke people by jumping one direction, and as she lands, she can start running the other direction, kinda like how Shaco likes to stealth. But most importantly, this stealth also gets a reset on takedowns. That is what's really scary about this. Next, her E deals damage in line, which also slows enemies. and it makes Aurora hop back, because she is a bunny. So it's a simple spell to create some distance. And lastly, her ultimate is a giant AoE nuke that creates a spirity arena. It gives her speed, and every time Aurora touches one of the walls, she gets teleported to the other side, kinda like Pac-Man. But her enemies can't do that. They take damage instead. But unlike the arena of someone like Mordekaiser, everyone can escape this one by simply blinking over the walls. You can't dash through them, you will still just take damage from that, but you can jump over them. So you really have to be careful about all the counterpicks. So, as you can see, besides the ultimate, this is not the most complex champion. However, she does have a really high skill ceiling. Especially with the resets on her W and the kiting within her ultimate, she will be an absolute pain to deal with in the hands of a pro. For the entire casual player base though, she's totally fine. You'll see that she is way squishier than most champions, and she does have quite short range. That's why she has the hop back, the slow, and the stealth. It is all balanced within the reason that she does actually have a really short range. With that said though, as I mentioned, I'm kinda scared of the fact that Aurora might work really well as an attack speed on-hit carry. I mean, the 3-hit passive deals damage based on the enemy's maximum health, so theoretically she can melt through tanks. Unless there is a cooldown on the passive, in that case, none of that really matters. But if there's not, I mean, with her W she is gonna work like Vayne. So the attack speed hypercarry build might be something fun to try. But that is it for Aurora's reveal. As I said, everything about her looks really solid. This is honestly a great champion that's coming out right now. The story looks good, the gameplay looks fun, even though it might crumble because it might be annoying to play against, and her design is great in the end. And that's not to mention that her story is actually tied to the old gods of Freljord. So needless to say, I was hooked on her from the first moment she was revealed. I mean, you should see the notes I took during her presentation.